Okay, we are rolling. No, I'll go first. Welcome to another episode of Fit Pet Boston Talks, where normally I sit down with local Boston, Massachusetts area dog handling professionals and we chit-chat about our lives, our dogs, and our careers. However, since we are all in this quarantine situation together, Laurie and I have been doing question and answer sessions every Friday, releasing a podcast, and we answer the questions that our Instagram followers and clients ask us. And this is the last segment of questions before I will throw it out there to you guys again, because the first time I asked for questions, we got a fair amount. So we're only answering 3 questions today, but they're all heavy hitters. Thank you so much for listening, and also for subscribing and liking the podcast, and also to the couple of you folks that I very, very much appreciate who have made donations on Patreon. So I have a Patreon page set up for Fit Pet Boston Talks, and any real sum of money will do, but $5 a month is kind of like a virtual tip to help keep the podcast going. And I very much appreciate those of you who have given a little bit, because this is a labor of love. I love doing it. I love connecting people, but it does take up a little bit of my time. So if you could like and subscribe to the podcast, share it on your socials, that would mean the absolute world to both of us. So thank you very much. Okay, let's get into these questions here. The first one is, who are your favorite dog trainers, or which do you most closely align with in philosophy and practice? You, meaning me, introduced me to Larry Crone, and I really enjoyed his videos, his obvious love of dogs, and his approach to dog training. Laurie has asked me to answer this question first, so I will go ahead and do that as best I can. That's a really big question as well. That was from Andrea, who has asked quite a few questions that are all very applicable. Okay, so Larry Crone, if you folks don't know of him, has a pretty big social media presence and started posting videos, I think, before it was particularly in vogue. So he garnered a good following. And I think the one thing about Larry that a lot of people can identify with is I feel as though he's able to identify with both dog owners and dog trainers. So that's kind of, he bridges a little bit of a gap there, which is great. And the other thing that I love about Larry Crone is his book. So his book on e-collar training was written so that a 12-year-old can understand what he is trying to say. And the stories are very applicable, the case studies that he gives, rather. And I find it a very digestible piece of literature, I guess you could call it that people who have no idea how to begin e-collar conditioning can really connect with what he has to say in that book. So I find that to be a good resource to give to clients that have questions about that. So I think that that's why, you know, his name comes up more often for me and a few clients. But one thing I love about Larry Crone is he's always pointing to other trainers, specifically Michael Ellis, Bart Ballon, and Ivan Balabanov as his role models, who I think they're all great dog trainers as well and would be on my list of favorite dog trainers. But on the other side of that coin, when I was studying for the CPDT test, I watched a ton of Jeanne Donaldson videos, who is a really prolific and published positive dog trainer, and she is super talented and great at using the clicker and also at just general instruction. She's just a really smart person, and I probably watched hours of her training videos getting ready for the test, and also as just a general reference. And she would definitely be somebody that I just have taken a lot of what she has had to say and the research that she's done. She also wrote a resource guarding book that you recommend a lot. Mine, yeah.
It's really step by step.
Yes.
Some people find it a little painful, but hey, you know what? It works. It's step by
simple.
step. Yeah, it's to the point. I would agree with all those things. And then I just thought about the people that the books I had to read to study up for the Association of Professional Dog Trainers exam. And I thought of Jeanne Donaldson, Kathy Sadeo, Patricia McConnell, Ian Dunbar, and Steve White. And they all have books. I mostly agree. I don't agree with some of them. There's like a lot of luring, and sometimes a lot of luring drives me crazy, but I do like all those people that I just mentioned. I love Steve White. I think that what was that book? The Clicker Lady.
Karen Pryor.
Yes. So Steve White really cuts down that entire book, which
Okay.
I know some dog trainers find to be a bit mind-numbing. So,
Well, I think she has a whole school.
yeah, she is a whole school now. But yeah, all those people, I really enjoyed listening to them. I got something from all of them, and I had to read those books.
Yeah, same. I had to read a ton of books. And then I think the larger part of that question, so I guess, Andrea, to answer your question, I can speak for myself and not Laurie, but I have favorite dog trainers, but I don't look to somebody and say, that person really exemplifies the way that Laurie and I train. And I'll say that because a lot of popular trainers, they kind of fall in different camps, right? So they might fall in more of a balance training camp or an all positive camp, or their own camp where they kind of just stick up their middle finger to everybody else and don't really want to associate and only, deal with a certain, subgroup of the dog population, and they just kind of are on their own. I think, Laurie and I kind of do things a little bit differently, but we can most certainly take information from all of the people that we just mentioned who are, they're at the tippy top. Yeah, they're at the tippy top. And one thing that I did want to say and just kind of give as an example is popular trainers, they're like I just said, they're not really going to fit our, what we would say, oh, we are just like so and so. And I find that local trainers are where I get the most inspiration because I can see and I can hear and interact with them, and then with them and the way that they're handling the dog, and then I can go ahead and follow up with my own investigation. And I'll give an example. There's tons of examples I can think of from going to classes with Liz Cleaves up at Auntie Dog. And then recently, the last time we did a bite work session, Tyler was talking to one of the dog owners about drive and like the way that the dog looks in their eye. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what this kid's talking about right now. And then I went online and watched a Learberg video, like an 1.5-hour video, and just talked about all the different types of drives that are, that a protection trainer or, the difference between protection work and competition work. And that made a better picture for me because I was able to say, okay, I had this experience, real life, real time. And then I was able to get this information that was able to kind of teach me about that, that specific training technique. So I find that the more I'm exposed to these local people that are very accessible to all of us, and we were kind of like teaching each other in a way, I find that that's where I really learn the most. And I just kind of wanted to make that distinction between, like Michael Ellis, Bart Ballon, and Ivan Balabanoff. I mean, they don't just come out with information. They're very, very, established, and they book seminars
Talented,
that sell out
amazing
in no time. I know Bart Ballon has his own learning theory and school and stuff like that. So these are, very, very established people specifically in competition and stuff like that. But I think that that's an awesome question, and thank you for asking it. Did you want to say anything else about trainers?
No, just because I agree with, I share similar experiences recently. I've always enjoyed dog seminars, which they don't have anymore because of how life is these days. Not just from quarantine, it's just everything's online. I kind of miss, I didn't even talk with everybody when we went to seminars, but I just enjoyed being around a bunch of people who were dog freaks like myself. So I think that's why I'm really happy hanging out with local dog trainers, because even though we all have different levels of experience, we all usually have a little something to offer. So that's it. You never stop learning.
No, and I think that that's the key as well with if you find a trainer that you are interested in working with. I think a sign of a good trainer is somebody that is always learning. And, of course, you're not going to know that the minute that you meet them. But at the same time, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just figuring out ways to access information and then, be able to explain that information along, to the person that we are trying to instruct. So Awesome question. There's one more thing I wanted to say about that one, but I'm not sure. Oh, I wanted to talk about the quadrants because I feel like when I think about this question, I think one of the things that really taught me a lot about dogs and dog behavior was learning about the 4 quadrants and learning theory and learning about how dogs learn. And that's something that some trainers are like, oh my God, never talk about the quadrants because it just makes people fall asleep. But if you,
I love that stuff.
I do too. And
I'm a psychology. I minored in psychology in college, so
it just made so much. It's like, it's that moment where you're like, oh, that clicked and it made sense to me. And then I can apply that to, you know, just doing any simple thing with a dog. And it is boring for some people. And it is something that never gets addressed in a training class one-on-one with a client, unless maybe I'm working with somebody that knows about behavior, the science behind behavior, I guess. But that was a real springboard for me, is learning, you know, about positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, et cetera, and being able to apply that to training and in a really practical way was that's a huge foundation for me, and just understanding about dog training.
It's like a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is.
The 4 quadrants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment. I felt like we should name them if you mentioned it.
And I should also mention that of those 4 quadrants exists many different schools of thought in how to apply those different techniques for changing behavior.
But we all do it.
And teaching. I shouldn't say changing.
We might not use the words, but we all
we exactly
follow.
We don't use the words because, you know, they're boring, but
at the end of 3 or all 4.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that's really the bedrock there.
Yep.
Okay, next question is a good one. What do you do if a dog starts choking? Is there a training class that dog owners can take?
The first thing parents do is freak out. No.
Anybody would do. I mean, heck.
Yeah. I mean, I had a scene, but I just put my hand down the dog's throat and ripped it out. They had choked on, the dog had swallowed a bully stick. And I remember just sticking my hand down her throat and pulling it out. I freaked out, but then I went into action.
Right.
So I took a dog CPR class that, to be perfectly honest with you, I should take again. I usually manage a situation a lot. I'm very careful with the toys that I let the dogs have access to. Of course, one point or another, management may fail and they may choke, but I need to up my dog CPR again. I think I took it well over 4 years ago. And Leah took a CPR class. So do you want to tell them where you did it, who you used?
Yes. Before I do that, can you name some common objects that dogs choke on? Like what is...
Well, in my experience, it's been bully sticks. If a dog manages to break off a piece of nylabone, regular sticks, those have been my choking hazards that I've seen in my 16 years.
Bouncy ball. Didn't you have a bouncy ball?
No, I would have remembered, because each one of them is drilled into my mind, which is why I'm so neurotic about what toys I allow in my place. Like, parents will be like, oh, this is their favorite toy. I'm like, too bad. If I think it's even a risk, I will not do it. Rope toys. I mean, I've pulled a rope. A dog will be swallowing a rope and they'll start to choke and I'll pull the rope right out. Yeah. Thankfully, my problems have been solved by me putting my hand down the dog's mouth and pulling it out.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that I did learn in the class.
And they might bite you when you do that, by the way, because you have your hand in their mouth and they're choking and in distress. So don't take it personally. Just get it out.
Yeah, I'm sure that having 2 people would be better than 1 to hold. Well, I think that kind of take it for granted that our dog hasn't eaten or choked on something that they could have. If you have a puppy and they outgrow the toys that they have, the parents don't seem to toss the toys.
Yeah, like the baby Kongs.
Yeah, the red baby Kongs.
Or pink or blue.
I'll oftentimes, if I go into a house with an adult dog, they'll have those types of toys. And I think because the dog hasn't eaten them, they just feel like it's not a risk. At the same time, it's when I look at it and I'm like, oh, that could easily get stuck in their throat without much effort at all.
I've had a hard time with those twisted bully sticks because the dogs will untwist them and then it's a very
Stringy.
thin. I just get the regular. Anytime somebody buys anything for puppies, I say, why don't you just buy a medium or large size? Because they're going to grow into it anyway. You won't have to rebuy the item. And I know that if it's left around, the dog won't, the dog won't eat it as fast as they would if it was a puppy toy. So I really don't buy puppy toys, guys. I just go right to like an intermediate and adult stage, and the dog can play with that. And recently, one of the puppies I was doing private classes with, he hung out with me for the day, started throwing up. I thought maybe it was a warm day. He had excessive exercise. That night, I checked in with the parents. They said he was fine. The next day, he started throwing up again. I go, that's it. Bring him to the vet. And sure enough, after surgery, they pulled a rope out of his gut, out of his intestines. It hadn't gone to the colon yet. So, guys, just if your dog is a chewer or you don't know, you really got to keep your eyes on them, and you have to get rid of the toys. And they just noticed a little bit too late. Like they had told, I said, did your dog eat anything when I saw him throwing up? And they did mention, there was a rope toy, some fabric toys, but we got rid of it. So just stick with hard toys. I love Bully Make now. I actually got one of their boxes that you can subscribe to a month. They make really good toys. They're Nylabone and hard rubber.
Yeah, the balls are really cool. The toys that are like the size of a ball, but
Durabone,
dogs love
Nylabone.
them.
They judge it by your dog's size. You can get it every month. You can get it every 6 months. There's all these choices. So just get really hard, durable toys. And I like bionic toys too. So that's my advice for that.
Pet Emergency Education is the name of the class that I took, and I cannot recommend it enough. It was an afternoon, and the instructors were phenomenal. I was able to chat with them after the class. We just were talking about dogs, and they were both veterinary technicians at Angel Memorial in Waltham, which is an emergency hospital, and that, they see absolutely everything because the animals that are coming into the emergency, the vet just said, no, go directly to the emergency. So, they've seen so much and can give examples and also give a lot of really great tips. So I had a really great class, and I'm, I think, due to renew in the fall. So I have to take a look, but I could not recommend that enough. And as far as advice for if your dog is choking, the only thing that I will say is you can try to clear their airway with your hand, as Laurie said, and then you can, administer technique in order to try to dislodge whatever is they're choking on. But I'm not going to explain how to do that on a podcast because it would make zero sense, and I'm not certified to do that. So please check out the class, and it is worth every single penny. And the other thing that I will say about the class, it was technically a CPR class. So the big part of the instruction was how to, try to resuscitate a dog that's not breathing and their heart and their lungs aren't working. So that was really the meat and potatoes of what we were quote unquote tested on at the end of the course. They kind of put like a little dummy on the ground and you have to, do CPR. But really what I thought was super interesting was being able to ask these vet techs any question you want. Their stories were, ridiculous, but they had so much great advice about, household items that will harm your dog, plants that will, that might poison your dog, different types of chemicals that are in food and food additives, and how, and how that can be dangerous for your dog, and not in a scary way, but in a way where they can literally say, I've seen dogs suffer from illness because of these common household things, which I thought was really eye-opening, especially if you're somebody that has a young dog, like Laurie was saying, a chewer or something like that. If you have an older dog that might not have never chewed anything, you might be able to just get away with a lot more. But I can't recommend the class enough. It was great. And I have to get recertified. I think it's every 2 or 3 years. I have to double check, but it's the same class. You just have to keep taking it over and over again as a refresher. Okay, and lastly, we have how do you choose the right dog for your family or for yourself?
You didn't say their names this week.
Oh, I'm sorry. This last one was from at Danielle Fowler, and the previous was at Roubaix Roy Michelle. And Andrea was the first question. I think I did say her name.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you want to give Danielle's question a go here? How do you choose the right dog for a family or for yourself?
I'll just say for a family, not for myself. I mean, all right. So for a family, somebody's just looking for a puppy. Consider your lifestyle, your living situation, affordability, grooming, temperament, but not in that order. I would pick temperament above all things. Lifestyle, living situation. Yeah, temperament's obviously on the top of the list. When you give a description of your dog, if you say, I want a dog that doesn't require too much work or too much activity, a dog that likes everybody, doesn't make a lot of noise, just get a stuffed animal. You should just get a little teddy bear and call it a day. But I think that just consider what your life is. I meet a lot of couples who are just starting out and they're dating or they're going to get engaged, and I watch their families grow and the dogs that they choose ahead of time, and a lot of them get dogs before they have babies, which I suggest. I think it's really difficult to get a puppy when you have a newborn in the house or when you're already pregnant. Though
I had a good conversation with my sister the other day, and she called and I answered, and the first thing out of her mouth was, dogs and toddlers just do not get along.
Yeah, it's really
hard.
hard.
And I was like, oh, geez, what's going on? And I think the management piece, for her son is just, he wants to just be on top of the dog, pulling his ears, pulling his tail at every chance that he gets. And I said to her, I'm like, the only redemptive thing I think is that your son's going to grow out of it, and you have to keep them separated until, he gets to the stage where you can do some more parenting.
Yeah,
and his level of understanding is a little bit more sophisticated.
And we offered an escape route for the dog so that if the kid started going after him, you can tell your dog, like Charlie the dachshund, I'd be like, Charlie, go save yourself. But it would be with bigger dogs because I didn't want him to get squashed. And he would jump up on his chair. So Charlie's word was, go save yourself. And it was a place where none of the other dogs could get him. So you can do the same thing with your kids. Like you hope that when you have a kid, you have a dog that's tolerant enough to deal with it, or a dog that removes himself from the scene. So if you're a very active person, if you're super active, the border collie, the shepherd, these working dog breeds, that's something that you can consider. If you're working all day, or I know super active people. I knew these 2 trainers that wanted a dog, and they're like, we want a lazy dog. And I said, but you guys are active all the time. And they go, exactly. When we come home, we don't want to be active. We want to bring the dog for a walk. Sure, we want to bring the dog for walks, but we want a companion, and we don't want a psycho pants. So I said, all right. So they ended up getting a Newfie, and he's the best thing. I don't even know. I think he's 13 years old now. And they're the best team ever. They love each other. He gets to go for walks all the time, but he's not off the charts, full of energy, and that's exactly what they wanted. Sometimes, like I always call Corgis or King Charles, Cavalier King Charles or Malteses. I call them the old lady dogs. But those 3 particular breeds, I never have a huge behavioral issue when those people call me. I can normally send them on their way. So I don't know, for some reason those 3 breeds they're always with older people and they don't cause too many problems. So, and think about how often you're going to groom the dog. So for the person that asked Danielle, I know kind of her situation, and I feel like she's like a lab family, but I know that Josh likes German Shepherds. So I say that if you have a good training program, I mean, you should train any dog that you get. But if you're willing to put in the work, if you're going to travel a lot, and the dog's going to be in the car for a particular amount of time or for a long time, an active dog might not be the one for you. I think that you'd want like a smaller size breed or something like that. But every dog requires so much work. So just think about your life and how much money you want to put into grooming. The larger the dog, the bigger the bills, especially if your dog has to go on antibiotics, heartworm, any kind of tick preventative. I mean, so think about all that stuff, guys. Your lifestyle, your living situation, affordability, grooming, and if you're going to have a ton of, if you're starting a family, I do suggest getting the dog before you start the family and making sure that you're the dog's coach and not their mom too much, or their dad. Like, don't love them to death, because soon you're going to have a child in the picture and they're going to take a lot of space. So you want a nice coach-player relationship with your dog so that when the kid doesn't come along, they're missing all this over affection that you gave them.
Yeah, I think that that's all very true, and also advice that I have probably heard you say 10 times.
Billion times. I'm sorry, I'm boring you.
You're not. It's for the listeners. Gotta impart that knowledge. I mean, seriously. Yeah, I think as far as choosing the right dog for your family or for yourself, it depends on the situation. But I think that just knowing there's going to be a little bit of work for an amazing reward is the attitude that I wish every single dog owner would take. That, there is going to have to be a follow through with the rules. And I'm not going to call it training, because I think in a lot of cases, the biggest thing, the things that I'm trying to teach people aren't actually dog training. It's just household management, how to live and cohabitate comfortably with the dog by creating rules and structure so that everybody can live harmoniously. So if you have that in the back of your mind before you get a dog, it doesn't really matter what type of dog you get, you're off on the right foot. Then you have to decide all the things that Laurie was talking about too. What's your level of activity? What is your budget? What is, what are your expectations for, exercising the dog? I think that there are minimums of, there should be a minimum amount of time that you spend exercising the dog. And by exercising, I don't mean letting them out into the yard so that they can do whatever they want. I mean actively engaging in some sort of physical activity with your dog, whether it's walking, hiking, biking, swimming, whatever, that they're getting every single day. So having those questions answered before you head into ownership is going to make it a lot easier once, the right fit comes along. How I think one of the cool things about acquiring the dogs that we have now and how we chose for ourselves is, one of the things that Laurie says, it kind of like the dogs almost kind of come to you. And obviously I was actively looking for Ruben when we got him, but the doors were opened at the right time. Even with the breeding that Jane did for Buddha, that door opened at the right time. And so we take that into consideration a lot when we're thinking about getting a dog. And it's like, am I pushing too hard because it's what I want and nothing is kind of materializing? Or, maybe I need to take a step back and like really decide, like, do I really want to make this decision? So I think that's been kind of big for us, which I know kind of sounds kind of hokey pokey, but you've always said if we got a third dog, it would have to just like fall from the sky and be a perfect fit.
Yeah, I am happy with 2 dogs lately. I had 3 dogs, but I was single at the time, and I didn't have my business wasn't as busy as it was at the time. So I like that, you have Ruben and I have Buddha, and both dogs get equal time and they get tons of activity every day. And I know if there's a third dog that time would be divided. And every time I had to say goodbye to a dog, I thought, did I give this dog the life it deserved? Did it get enough activity? Did it have enough fun? Did I do right by the dog? And, with Buddha, I had to think really hard about getting him. I had Ripa in the house. I didn't want her to feel replaced. I loved her to death. I wanted to make sure that I was there for her because she was so sick towards the end. So all those things play a part. I even was thinking about, another Rottweiler litter came along, and they're so cute. And granted, Buddha was cute too, but he was an asshole. And they were so cute, but I was like, things are just so uncertain right now.
Yes.
Like the quarantine and the way work has been put off, and the quarantine kind of put things into a weird perspective. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to continue on the way I've been continuing on? So really consider your life. It's nice to be settled if you have a dog, or at least be in one place for a while.
It's interesting that we have that perspective and kind of not refused, but kind of, quote unquote, let the sleeping dog lie, and decided, no, we're not going to get a puppy, when in this situation it would be a perfect time for us to get a puppy, because we could really put that.
I could train it.
We could training in that. And, with puppies, you have to be home. When we got Ruben from Schultz, they said, are you going to be out of the house for longer than 3 hours at a time, I think was actually the writing. And they need to know when they're adopting a puppy out that that somebody's really going to be home all the time. And so in this
you have to set up a dog walker. You have to have your ducks in a row, people. You have to, if you're working, you have to make sure you have a dog sitter, a dog walker. You can't count on neighbors and family. They cancel all the time. That's how I've got a lot of my business, because the only one that comes through is the dog lady.
Right.
So you cannot count on family members to always fill the spot.
Right.
If you're paying somebody, they'll show up because you're paying them for a job. So get your ducks in a row, folks.
When we decided not to pursue getting a puppy at this time, a lot of other people have taken the other road, and on Channel 5 News tonight, it was the first story. They were interviewing Schultz, which was where we got Ruben, and she said they normally get 70 applications a week, and the past week they got 300, and all the kennels are empty. So I think that a lot of people are getting dogs right now because they're home, and I think that they think it's going to be a good opportunity for them. So I'm just waiting for that phone to start ringing. Once everybody goes back to work.
Once they go back to work, it's going to be so hard. And I always say to people, when you get a dog, make sure you're not getting the dog for a status symbol. Make sure that you say to yourself, I really want a friend, because I've never had such good friends as my own dogs. So when you look at them, with hearts in my eyes, I look at my dogs. I just love them to bits. And Ruben, it was such a positive experience going to Schultz Guest House, and we went in saying, we might not find a dog today. And you can do that too. You can be pursuing a dog. You can go to meet the dog and say, I don't think this is the dog for me. So don't feel forced to do it. It's going to click. You might walk in and, we were lucky you make an appointment ahead of time. You do a lot of paperwork. You make an appointment and you get to walk in the back of the kennel, and we got to see the dogs outside, inside. We got to take Ruben for a walk. We got to bring Rippa. We were choosing between Ruben and his litter mate, and Rippa got to meet both of them. She pretty much made the choice.
The litter mate there was, I think, a little bit more in her face.
Oh my God,
rambunctious.
As soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh, Rippa doesn't like him at all.
No, and Ruben really learned very quickly to stay out
right
of
away
her
and looked
way.
at her.
There was one time that he got a good correction from her on Christmas Day, and that was it. That was all it really took for him.
I told you.
Yeah, it was it was intense. But I think that, if you have just acquired a dog, congratulations. I think that it's always a really awesome thing to add to your family. And I think that this actually is a good time. But I do also encourage anybody who has acquired a dog to get your ducks in a row, right? So once your kids go back to school and once your work schedule resumes, really have a plan in place for care and training. It's really, really important. I kind of can't stress that enough, because one of the things that we're not going to talk about today, but they actually addressed on Channel 5 News, was separation anxiety. And that's a real thing for some dogs. And you see it a lot. And I hate to kind of pinhole rescues, but you do see it a lot with rescues and separation anxiety and anxiety inside the crate or any type of confine. So if you have questions, reach out to us and let us know. I think that we have, always had our doors open, and once again, we're just kind of finishing this up here. This was like the lightning round of 3 questions before we go ahead and ask again if anybody has anything that they are dying to know about dogs, and we'll do our best to answer them. But thank you very much, Laurie, for sitting with me. I know that you've had a lot on your mind these past couple of days.
Well, it's nice to spend time together.
It really is, even though there's this space. There's literally 6 feet in between us right now, too. It's so funny. It's so funny. But once again, you guys, thank you so much for the questions. Thank you for listening. And please, please like and subscribe to the podcast. Share it with your friends. We will keep going while we can. While our work has been abbreviated, we are kind of slowly getting back into it, but it is a really, really weird situation right now for us and for all dog people. So while we are in this quarantine situation, we're going to keep pumping out these podcast episodes because I know that there are folks out there that are really getting something out of this, and that makes me super, super happy. So thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.